Welcome to CS History Anon. Today, we'll be diving into why the Romans suffered this devastating defeat against Arminius at the Teutoburg Forest. Publius Quinctilius Varus was a trusted governor and general appointed by Emperor Augustus. However, while Varus was politically competent, he lacked the military experience needed for campaigns in the wild and untamed lands of Germania. Varus assumed that the Germanic tribes were largely pacified and compliant with Roman rule. This overconfidence blinded him to the growing resistance against Roman occupation. Varus's biggest mistake was his underestimation of the local population. He believed that the Germanic tribes were primitive and easily subdued. One quote by Roman historian Suetonius captures this arrogance. "Varus, give me back my legions," Augustus is said to have exclaimed in despair after hearing of the disaster. This cry symbolizes not only the loss of soldiers, but also the catastrophic underestimation of the Germanic people and their ability to resist Rome's might. At the heart of this story is Arminius, a chieftain of the Cherusci tribe who had once served as an auxiliary in the Roman army. Trained in Roman tactics and fluent in Latin, Arminius was a trusted ally of Varus. However, Arminius harbored a deep resentment toward Roman occupation. Using his knowledge of Roman military methods, he carefully plotted an ambush that would lead to Varus's downfall. Arminius convinced Varus to march his legions through the dense Teutoburg Forest under the pretense of quelling a minor uprising. Unbeknownst to Varus, this was a trap. The forest was an ideal location for an ambush. Narrow paths, thick vegetation, and poor visibility made it difficult for the Romans to maintain formation or respond to attacks effectively. One of the key reasons for the Roman defeat was the unsuitable terrain. The Teutoburg Forest was a dense, swampy, and hilly region, completely unlike the open battlefields where the Roman legions excelled. Roman military strength lay in their tight formations, like the famous testudo or tortoise formation, where soldiers locked their shields together. However, in the forest, these formations became nearly impossible to maintain. The Germanic warriors, on the other hand, were familiar with the terrain and used guerrilla tactics, striking quickly and retreating into the forest's cover. They harassed the Roman columns over several days, wearing them down and preventing any coordinated defense. The Romans, spread thin along narrow paths, became sitting targets for ambush after ambush. Their rigid discipline and reliance on traditional battle tactics became a disadvantage in the face of such unpredictable assaults. Another significant factor in the Roman defeat was poor logistical planning. Varus and his legions were not prepared for a prolonged campaign in the hostile wilderness. The forest's rough terrain slowed their movements, and bad weather turned paths into mud, making it nearly impossible to transport supplies or move the wounded. By the time the ambush was fully sprung, the Romans were physically and mentally exhausted. Morale crumbled as supply lines were cut off, and panic spread among the troops. The legionaries, who were used to clear commands and strategic maneuvers, found themselves lost and leaderless in a seemingly endless forest. One of the more devastating elements of this defeat was the betrayal by Arminius. Varus had placed immense trust in him, believing that Arminius was loyal to Rome. This misplaced trust left the Romans vulnerable to an enemy who knew their every strength and weakness. Arminius's betrayal was the ultimate psychological blow, as the Romans were caught completely off guard by an adversary they considered an ally. The Roman historian Tacitus would later reflect on this disaster, stating, "The Romans were not defeated by the enemy's strength, but by the treachery of their own." This highlights the significant role that betrayal played in the downfall of Varus's legions. The collapse of trust between the Romans and their auxiliaries rendered them even more susceptible to defeat. The destruction of 3 legions, nearly 20,000 soldiers, sent shockwaves through the Roman Empire. This defeat was more than just a military loss. It was a psychological blow to Roman invincibility. Augustus, upon hearing the news, is said to have been inconsolable for months. Rome's expansion into Germania was halted, and the Rhine River became the de facto border of the empire in the region. The Teutoburg Forest disaster exposed the limits of Roman power, showing that even the most disciplined and powerful military could be undone by a combination of treachery, overconfidence, and unfavorable terrain. For centuries, this battle stood as a symbol of Roman vulnerability and the fierce independence of the Germanic tribes. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video.